Now we get to the true heart of economics, at least microeconomics, and that is our demand and supply curves. If you've watched the graphical intro video, you've seen some of this that we're talking about, where we were demonstrating the importance of understanding slope, that demand curves were downward sloping, that they have a negative slope, that what that illustrates is the inverse relationship between price and quantity. What we want to talk about in this video is the actual law of demand and law of supply, and that's what describes the demand and supply curves. The law of demand is that when the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down, or if you'd prefer to say it the other way, when the price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. But either way, what you're capturing in the law of demand is the price on this axis is going to move in the opposite direction of the quantity on this axis. So if we're going to start up at a high price, we're going to have a low quantity, and it's going to increase quantity as the price falls. And that is a demand curve. So there's your demand curve, and that's your law of demand. But it also works with intuition and your own experience as a buyer, because the demand curve is representing how much people, consumers, are willing to buy at each price. And when you're faced with the price of a good, if it's higher, you tend to buy less. And if it's lower, you tend to buy more. If it goes on sale, for example, we tend to see people buy more of it. All right, so that's your demand curve. Your law of supply is relating the price and the quantity supplied. Now, when you think about the supply curve, you have to flip into a different mode. It's very natural to think of ourselves as consumers and buyers, but unless you've actually run a business and set prices, you may not have actually thought like a firm. But for the supply curve, we need to think about a firm. And do we like high prices or low? Well, when you're the firm, you're getting paid the money. You like the prices to be very high. And so as prices go up, the quantity will also go up. And as the price goes down, the quantity goes down. So as we start to draw the supply curve, we need to start with a low price and a low quantity, and it needs to go up towards the price and the quantity also going up as well. So we can start, say, here and bring it on up like that. And there is a supply curve. And what a supply curve is then is telling you is the quantities the firms will supply at different prices. Okay, so now we have our supply curve, now we have our demand curve, and you might notice that if you just look at this picture, even if you knew nothing else, you might wonder what is the significance of this point here, this point where they cross. And you would be very much correct to wonder that. That is an important point, and that is what we call market equilibrium. Equilibrium in the sense that when the market reaches that price, it has no incentive, there's nothing, no force, no nothing pushing it to a new price unless something else changes. So as long as the supply curve stays still, as long as the demand curve stays still, we're going to stay at this price, and that's what we mean by equilibrium. We'll talk later in another video about why a demand curve or supply curve would shift. But for now, if this is what the situation for a particular market, this is what we'd be looking at, there's something significant about that price. So let's talk about that a little bit. What if instead of being here at this price, we were up at this higher price? What would that mean for the market? How would the market react to being at a price like this? Well, first of all, we need to bring in some of our graph reading skills. At this particular price, what we know about the demand curve is it's a curve that shows what quantity will be demanded at different prices, right? So at this price, here is our quantity demanded. Now the supply curve shows us how much will be supplied at different prices. So let's go back to that price. And here is our quantity supplied. So our quantity supplied is quite a large number compared to our quantity demanded. That means literally, just, picture in your mind that the producers have put more items on the shelf to sell, that's your quantity supplied, than the buyers are willing to buy. So you have extra on the shelf, or you can call it a surplus. And another term you'll hear is excess supply. So surplus and excess supply, same thing. And what it means is that there's more being offered for sale than is being bought. Now, the reason equilibrium is important is if a market finds itself in this situation, the sellers don't want to not sell what they've made. And so in order to get rid of their excess supply, they will start to lower their price. And as they lower their price, as the price, let's show you this way, comes down this way, the willingness to continue supplying the same quantity is going down. And as the price falls, their willingness to supply falls as well. We're moving this way on the quantity supplied axis. And so as the price is falling, they're moving down to the market equilibrium. The demand side, you're starting at this price. When the price was this high, this is all they're willing to buy. But as prices are cut, as you have sales to get rid of the surplus, you start to see more and more people willing to buy as the price falls. And so you have both curves. You see the market forces pushing us down along until we get to the equilibrium. And there's no incentive for the price to go any further, because if the price goes down further, then our quantity demanded would be higher. Let's go down to here. Let's say the price was all the way down here. The quantity demanded would be at this level, but the quantity supplied at this price, quantity demanded is here, quantity supplied is over here. And so here you have the opposite of a surplus. You have a shortage. The quantity demanded, the amount people are willing to buy, is greater than the quantity supplied. So that's your shortage or your excess demand. And there you can imagine, the hot toy at Christmas time. People are lining up to buy it, and there's just not enough on the shelf. Anytime you hear about a shortage, complaining that they're not making enough, what that really means is that the price something is being sold at, like concert tickets, they're big on this one, is lower than people's willingness to pay, really. Because at this lower price, if this was if this is the price for a concert, this is the only amount of seats being made available, but here's how much people want at that price. Whereas if the price was raised, you wouldn't hear about a shortage because only that amount of people actually want to pay. And that's the significance of the market equilibrium. And the overall significance is a market left to its own, to come to its own point of equilibrium. It'll do that. When you're not at market equilibrium, the prices will fall until they are there, or rise until they are there, whichever is appropriate. And any shortage or any surplus will clear naturally. So here's my moment to mention one last thing. We talked at the very beginning video in chapter 1 about scarcity. We talked about scarcity was an always existing thing. It's not the same thing as shortage. Shortage is a temporary market condition of not being at equilibrium. So a shortage is whenever the current market price, is different from the market equilibrium price. And so when you're at a price that is lower than equilibrium price, you have a shortage. Left to its own devices with nothing interfering, the market will bring you up to market equilibrium. But scarcity, just to remind us, is ever-present condition of unlimited wants facing our limited resources, causing us to make choices, causing us to face trade-offs, and dealing with opportunity costs like we have talked about also in Chapter 2 with the Production Possibilities Frontier.